Welcome to the Creating Safe and Inclusive Spaces panel. We will begin shortly. Welcome to the Creating Safe and Inclusive Spaces panel. We will begin shortly. We are now ready to kick off the panel discussion. But first, let's meet the hosts. Matt Windsor-Johns, he, him, his, is the Assistant Director for LGBTQ+ programs at the University of Texas at Dallas. Matt has worked in higher education for over 15 years and loves working with students. UT Dallas is currently ranked number 14 in the nation for LGBTQ inclusivity based on the latest Campus Pride Index ranking. Matt's passions include making space for LGBTQ+ at the table. Matt knows Texas has a long way to go in inclusion for LGBTQ+ people, but he is committed to staying here and doing the work. Please welcome Matt Windsor-Johns.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this very important topic today. And of course, the timing could not be more important because we are coming off of the trial yesterday and hopefully a moment of moving forward and healing and fixing a lot of things wrong with our country and our systems at place. But to do that, creating safe and inclusive spaces are so incredibly important and needed in all of our workspaces, even outside of our workspaces. So I am Matt Windsor-Johns. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the Assistant Director for LGBT+ programs at the University of Texas at Dallas. If you didn't guess my title, I have a lot of rainbows behind me to show that I'm a safe zone and I'm a safe space to talk to anytime students come into my office. But enough about me. We have a lot of great people here today from all over the country and different businesses. So we are so excited to welcome our panel for today. And I think you're going to see them show up here in just a minute. Y'all, we're in for a great show. There they are. They're popping up one by one. So you're going to get a chance to not only hear from just one person, but part of creating a safe and inclusive space is actually bringing more voices and people to the table. And when doing that, making sure that they are diverse and inclusive themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with our introductions. I'm going to let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, but I'll, just for sake of continuity, go one by one. I'm going to start with Jessica. Jessica, tell us who you are and what you're here today.
Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Jessica Gonzalez. I am a Director of Digital Strategy for Santander Consumer USA. I am also the Texas Regional Leader for Conexión, the Latin Hispanic X Employee Resource Group, and I am also the Communications Champion for our Diversity and Inclusion Council. I am Hispanic and Latina, and I am also a spouse of a veteran, and I am really excited to be here, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. So good to have you. Next, let's hear from Andrella.
Hello, I am Andrella Thomas. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I work at Capital One as a managing consultant for diversity, inclusion, and belonging at Capital One. So my role is really about creating safe spaces and belonging across our division. I am a wife and mother of 2 children, and just hearing everything that had happened yesterday and seeing my children's response to all of that, I'm super excited about the timing of this conversation today. In addition to me leading DIB, a diversity, inclusion, and belonging work, you'll hear me say DIB. I'm also a community champion. I love giving back to the community and making sure that we have representation of everyone when we are representing Capital One in the community. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Andrella. And I love the word belonging. I feel like that's such an important word today. So I'm excited that's part of your title. That was very cool.
Yes.
Next, we have Tamias.
Hello, Matt and everyone. I'm Tamaya, Senior Project Manager for American Airlines Engineering Emerging Technology. The Emerging Technology team fosters innovative communities and hosts events that push all levels of Americans to explore innovative solutions for our end customers and reduce inefficiencies by promoting modern engineering practices. I'm currently focused on engineering equity, promoting a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion in all that we do through emerging technology to build active pipelines for diverse candidates from internal and external sources.
Yes. I don't know when you sleep at night. That sounds really incredible. Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Tomias. Next, let's hear from Shrikant.
Hello, everyone. I'm Srikant Ganeshan. I'm a managing director with Accenture. I manage a book of business for them and manage a global and diverse team cutting across US, Argentina, China, India, and Poland. So I have a good kind of sense of what does it mean to kind of be diverse and bringing so many cultures, to play over here. I'm based here in Plano. I'm invested in UTD. My daughter is at JSOM. I'm doubly proud about being in this session as well as contributing in my own way for this cause. Thanks, Matt.
Yay, UTD. I love to hear that. So our last panelist, last but not least, I should say, is we have Michael. Michael, let's hear who you are.
Hi, my name is Michael Thomas. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am the executive director of a nonprofit organization here in North Texas called My Possibilities. So while I am the least diverse of the individual on the panel, I represent one of the most diverse populations, and that is adults with autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, kind of the gamut of disabilities. And we spend most of our time, all of our time, trying to make sure that our guys have a pathway to belonging and inclusivity in the North Texas community.
Thank you so much, Michael. Y'all, you're in for a really, really good treat. I know you've probably been to a lot of online panels over the past year and the pandemic that we're still living in, but I promise you this one is very, very important, and I really feel like you're going to get a lot out of it. So we have some prepared questions for our panel today, but please know, put in the chat, put in the comments what questions you have too. Don't feel like you need to wait to the very end. I'll see them pop up and try to ask our panelists as well. So what we'll do is I'm going to ask a series of questions. I want to make sure we hear every voice. I recognize we only have a short time today, but just as a reminder, we're talking about beginning stages of creating safe and inclusive spaces. So there's going to be time after this where you're like, I wanted more. That's understandable. This is just getting you started and hopefully lighting the fire to start inclusive spaces wherever you might work or live. So my very first question, and it's kind of a broad question, but I'm going to start with Jessica. What is a safe/brave space to you, and why are they needed?
Sure, thank you. So I think it starts with inclusion, building a culture of, like Andrea said, of belonging, having leadership rooted in empathy, compassion, and social conscientious. What we're simply saying is bring your whole self to work and feeling safe about it. You can't bring your whole self to work if you don't feel like you have a safe environment. So having a culturally safe, respectful environment is really key in practice to creating an inclusive environment. So,
thank you for that answer. I'm just even thinking about, Andrella, what you said earlier, just about having to talk to your kids and even our Black and African American colleagues and friends that are showing up to work today, trying to navigate what's going on. I wonder if you have thoughts on that, as well as the question, what is a safe, brave space to you, and why is it needed?
I think safe space is built around trust. When there is an element of trust present in a room, and when I say a room, I mean a virtual room, in 2020, 2021. So for me, I think it's absolutely needed because we need time to process and reflect and release. It's very difficult for us, for me specifically as a Black woman, and then operating as a DIB or diversity and inclusion practitioner, having to set aside kind of my own responses to everything that I am hearing constantly about the things that are happening in my community. And so, because I have to immediately go into action. And so when I think about the safety that I require, working in all of those different spaces, I have to always have that at the top of my mind when I'm creating those safe spaces for our associates across our division. So we have conversations and we create conversation spaces in office hours for people to come and just do that and just reflect and share their experiences. you all know that when we see these things happening in the community, it brings up our own personal traumas and experiences with social and racial injustice. And so we don't have a platform anymore, an opportunity to release those things moving away from work, because it's all blended. And so it's so important that we figure out a way to plug in time and air. I like to call it air versus space for people to just breathe. And so that's why I feel like it's very much so needed.
I love the word air. I feel like you just dropped a truth bomb on all of us of how important just even words are when we're talking about safe and brave spaces. So Tamias, I wonder what your thoughts are about the question, why are safe or brave spaces important to you, and why are they needed?
I believe that they're important and they're definitely needed simply because when we think about these spaces, we're not thinking about projects, programs, or initiatives. We're actually thinking about livelihoods. It's that person's life, understanding that person as an individual, being authentic and finding that empathy for something you may not even understand about that person, but recognizing that that person still brings value. And if you're able to create that moment, that space, or that opportunity just to show that that person is respected, you're now pulling on that life stream, that heartstring to make things happen and move forward in that space. And they can grow and become better and recognize and have their value and authenticity just expressed throughout the entire company, organization, university, or wherever.
Thank you for that, especially the heartstrings, because like you've already said so far, we're not just talking about compliance at work. We're talking about things that are happening in real life, in real time, and having to process these and also do your job. Like, that's a lot to ask of people, especially in a pandemic, not to mention. Shrikant, I wonder what your feelings are about this question.
See, for me, Matt, I think a safe place is a place where there is no penalty box. Okay? You express your ideas, you express your views. Nobody's going to judge you about it. Right? There is no penalty for bringing a bad idea to the table. And what is a bad idea, for God's sake, right? So when you kind of take that penalty element out of the mix, every person feels safe. Every person feels strong, he or she. Right? They kind of bring their whole self, as Jessica said, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you take that fear out of your mind, that there is a penalty involved in the workplace, if I do something wrong, that itself creates an immense amount of confidence and safety, within everyone who is a part of the organization. No penalty box.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that thoughtful answer. And Michael, I'm wondering if you have some thoughts as well.
That's the downside to going last. Everybody stole the good stuff. I do think what I'd like to do is focus on the word brave, specifically that corporate culture in general and just culture in the U.S. is generational. And when you have things that have been done the wrong way, decade after decade, generation after generation, a brave space for me is whether it's a company, a university, but it's a group that's willing to step outside the boundaries of what has been done wrong and do things differently because they know those are the right things to do. That's a challenge, and there's implied risk with stepping out and becoming vulnerable as an organization and saying, no, we are going to be this way moving forward, because that is not something that has been long-standing in our country or in the workplace.
I totally agree with that. And I promise we'll switch up the people who answer, so you won't always be last.
No, if you keep me at the end of every question, it means I have a pass for my performance today.
You know what's funny in panels? If I go first, I'm like, oh no, I really thought I was last. I had tried to prepare. So, okay, so based on that great question, I wonder to hear from all of you, what are some steps? Because everyone's in a different place right now, right? You might have a total training for Safe Zone Ally training, like this sticker right here behind me. Our students, faculty, and staff can take this Safe Zone Ally training and learn more about LGBTQ plus inclusive language and ways to be an ally. And you can display this little sticker on your door to show that you're a safe space. But everyone's in completely different spaces. What are some ways that first steps to create a space like this, or air? I'm going to steal your word, Andrella. I'm going to borrow it and lift it up, right? But how do we create a space? What are some first steps in your company to get some buy-in for this? And let's start with Tamias. Is that okay, Tamias?
That's fine. That's fine. And this is a great question. I think one of the first things that has to be done to create this space or live in this era, breathe this air, is you first have to attack the psychological safety and build and breathe a culture that let a persons know it's okay to be Tamias. It's okay to be Srikant. It's okay to be Michael. It's okay to be Andrella. It's okay to be Jessica because you are who I wanted. You are what I need. You bring the value, and you not being you, it does nothing for me because it's your uniqueness and your gifts and your talents that comes with that. And give them the psychological safety just to be free. As Srikant said earlier, a no penalty zone. Just bring yourself, bring your thoughts, and bring your ideas. That's what needs to be done to get that psychological safety brought out there.
Good answer. Thank you, Tobias. I'm going to hop on over to Michael.
My initial thoughts are you should do a lot of an organization. So I'll use ours as an example. We did a lot last year, a lot of immediate digging on this is not something that you can take baby steps on. You have to rip off the Band-Aid and do it right and do it publicly. And so one of the things that I think an organization should do to encourage people to come forward and be their whole selves, because we could say that, and I felt to some degree companies have always said, oh, we want you to be, your authentic self when you come to work. But if you've got let's say you've got a dyslexia or an intellectual disability or something that the world could perceive as a limitation to you doing your job, are you just going to waltz right in and go, hey guys, guess what? I'm bringing my whole self to work and I have disabilities. No, because now you've not seen it demonstrated before, and you feel like your job is at risk. It's not safe. So I think not only do you have to communicate as an organization that this is a safe culture, that's what we're bringing forward, you have to put it on display every time there's an opportunity. You can't pick and choose, oh, this is a great chance to demonstrate how somebody who looks this way is safe. No, it's whether it's Black Lives Matter, Asian hate, disability forward, whatever it is, every single time you have to be active in communicating. We're celebrating why this person is great, why they are different from the rest of us.
Michael, I even love the language of specifically calling it out and not beating around the bush in terms of supporting people, saying stop Asian hate, Black Lives Matter, support trans people. Like, these words matter. And especially, I don't know about y'all, but I look at spaces, I'm like, are they really safe? Words like that help me realize that they actually are safe. Now, Jessica, I'm going to come to you with this question, but I'm seeing an audience question that I want to pair with it, if that's okay. So first steps to create an inclusive space. But also, the question specifically for you is, how has your experience as a military and veteran spouse influenced your view of safe and inclusive spaces?
This is a great question. Thank you so much. And I love not being first because I really build on the conversation. So thank you. So one, just a couple of points that people brought up is I think that it's really important that a safe space is everybody's in a different place in their journey. And I think the most important part about having a safe space is relationships, not being scared, because I think safe space is making a safe space for those that are marginalized, but also people that want to become allies often feel like, what if I say the wrong thing, or what if I offend somebody, or what if I'm, not doing the right thing, or we're using the right inclusive language. So just making sure that you have those relationships so you can have those open conversations that, hey, I may want to tell you this, but I don't know the right way to tell you, but can you help me, right? So I think that that's really important too, so that it's safe on both sides. And then as a military veteran spouse, it has been a huge, huge transition for us to go. So my husband would have lived and been in the military for the rest of his life. I am not the best military wife. And I tell that to people, and he tells me not to tell people that. But it was something really hard for me to admit. And I think that's another part about being safe and having a safe environment, is being able to be vulnerable in your own space so that people can feel like they can talk. And my husband is actually an employee resource group, and he leads the regional veteran employee network group. And I went and spoke at his one of his events, and he was talking about PTSD, and something that people see him, and he's really strong, and he's a leader, and he looks and feels like everything you would want from a military man. And I say that with the utmost respect. And I went there to tell them that I know what y'all think of my husband, Carlos. He is strong. He's a leader. He's everything you want to see there. But he does have challenges and he does have PTSD, but it's not because of the war, because he was made for the Army. It's actually because we lost our daughter. And after that, he's had severe PTSD, and also the implications of after going to the war. And so whenever I went and had this personal testimony in front of his employee resource groups, I told him that I had failed my husband in his military career because I wanted him to be out of the military so hard. And I felt like I didn't give him the support he needed when he was in the military. And it was such an emotional event for me because being vulnerable in that space, I thought I was going to be rejected. I thought people were going to come and tell me, how could you do that? Carlos is such a great guy. Why couldn't you be there for him? It was complete opposite. I had an overwhelming feeling of just support and love and really unconditional safe space in this environment. So I can't acknowledge enough about veterans being such a great environment to have safe space. They really make an ideal safe space because they've gone through so much. And a lot of times people look at them and they think, oh gosh, they're so strong and they're so brave, but they don't see what that wound is, right? And so I think that it's really important to make sure that you're always understanding that you only have your story, and it's really about perspective and really having that other person's story. So like I said, that was really, to me, it really helped me heal because I really carried that for years and years and years of not being the right supportive system for my husband. And it's changed me forever, really seeing veterans come to me and tell me it's okay and that they felt that way. So thank you.
Jessica, thank you for your answer, but honestly, thank you the most for your vulnerability, because I feel like that is a piece that's really hard to communicate with people, why safe spaces and brave spaces are so important. And I feel like you even just answered our question of creating a safe space, that vulnerability and letting us into your life and letting us know who you are, I feel like is so key into starting these conversations. So thank you so much for that. Shrikant, I wonder if you have some suggestions, maybe from where you're coming from, the business that you're at, creating these spaces, and also maybe getting buy-in from the higher ups and everybody else involved.
So Matt, see, when we look at what are the key ingredients of making a place safe, right? Many of the companies, what they do is they obviously write procedures, manuals. There is training involved for the leaders as well as for the employees, and then everything is shelved. and that's not the way this happens. You've got to, I like the way in which Michael put together, you've got to walk the walk. You've got to breathe this day in, day out, and that has to be top down, from the leaders coming down to the -1s, -2s, and to the respective teams. What I mean by walk the walk is, for example, as a leader in the team, you have to respect the views, and the respect cannot be just, oh, I like your idea. No, it should come from within. Because I'm telling you, if your voice is saying something and if your eyes are saying something different, everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. Okay. So it has to come from within. Okay. That you have to respect the ideas. Okay. You have to tell people that you talk, be candid, be open. You be open, they be open. There's a mutual respect. So walking the walk, on this is very important. And I talked about this no penalty zone. There's also one philosophy that we strongly believe is that whenever you see that someone is going in a different direction, which is not aligned to your core safety, space, you need to take a definitive action. You need to take a definitive action, and there should be zero tolerance for any retaliation of any kinds within the organization. When you do those things, right? You, by virtue of making this as the initial steps, you kind of send a message to the rest of the organization that this place is safe. Because we have set examples, we are walking the walk. That's how I see, most of the corporates, kind of doing it who are serious about making their places safe, rather than just making some vision statements and declaration statements and putting about 200-page manuals and shoving it right there.
You're making me think of, during Pride Month in June, we see all these companies turn their logos rainbow, which is exciting for me to see. And then the minute July 1st hits, it's like, bye. And I'm like, wait, what about like the continued support has to be there. So thank you for that. Andrella, I have that question. Also a question in the chat for you that I feel like pairs really well with this because I'm also very interested in your job title because it sounds so cool. How did you get into a position of promoting diversity or start a career where the role is mainly to promote diversity since some companies / industries don't have a section of diversity in job opportunities?
Oh, but they want to add it because they're calling every day about it.
Yes.
It's at the core of me, honestly. Like a culture of belonging and creating a culture of inclusion and belonging has always been a part of who I was as an individual. I have a mother who is incredible. She should be the senior CEO, vice president, every high-level role that there is around diversity and inclusion, because our family makeup is so diverse. I will tell you personally, when I think about my mom and just people that have come in and out of our lives, she's a huge advocate for the LGBTQ community. People would come out to my mother before they came out to their own family members. Just watching the safety that she created for others to be able to do that, it struck a chord with me, like it did something to me. And so my whole life, I was always about advocating for others within an organization. But the natural progression within this role happened with me because I was working in human resources. So I was working in HR as a learning consultant. But you know, at Capital One, I don't know if you guys know this, but I am called Oprah at Capital One because everybody, for some reason, there's this thing where if I would ask someone how they're doing and then they will tell me their entire life story. And it's because I model that behavior because I'm very vulnerable about my own personal experience. I am a survivor of abuse as a child, and so is my mother. And so when I share that story of how we came here with nothing, and how we've overcome some really traumatic experiences, it creates this opportunity for others to see, like, well, she's comfortable with doing that. I want to do that as well. So it's about modeling the behavior. But HR was my progression into the role of diversity and inclusion. And then being in HR and recognizing that we had in our organization opportunities to increase equity across our job functions, to increase representation across our organization. But we had no one really focused on just creating a strategy and plan around that work. And so when we got an incredible leader that led that space, I was doing some side of desk work for her, and it ended up me actually coming over to join her team. But one thing that I was doing before that was creating safe spaces. So anytime a group needed to talk about how their experience is at Capital One based on kind of their roles and just the work that they do, I was a person that held empathy interviews for individuals to hear their stories. And so I was doing this throughout my career at Capital One and then sharing those stories. I became the voice of the associate to our executive leaders and then opening and uncovering so many things that were happening with our associates at our organization. And so that's how I kind of naturally progressed into this role. I love that Jessica shared her story about her being a military wife because I'm actually mentoring a military veteran. And when you create safe space for people in groups that are not always spoken about, I also mentor people with different abilities as well. There's a lot of uncovering that happens. But as a leader, when I think about the leader's role when they're creating safe space, because there's a lot of questions around how do you enable your leaders to do this? Like the leader's role is to help with the uncovering, to encourage the uncovering through modeling the way. I think Shrinka said that perfectly. Like you have to say it and do it and feel it and declare it. And so when you are allowing people to be able to uncover kind of their stories, their journeys, it releases a bunch of blind spots that we had no knowledge of. But the leader's role is also to protect that associate in that space. Mm-hmm. Knowing that a leader is present provides that level of protection. That retaliation that was mentioned is something that is not tolerated. This is why I love our president, because he always talks about there's zero tolerance for anybody who is actually contributing to any type of feeling of not belonging, of exclusion. And so this is the thing that really drives me in our organization. But the progression into my role was really around me working in HR. But I am the person that if I see a need to uncover some things that need to be shared with our organization, I put my own self at risk. I sacrifice myself to be the advocate and the voice of others. And that led to me landing this role to continue to do that across our division. And I will do that even if I'm not working where I am. Yeah.
Oprah.
Angela, why did I want to tell you my life story when I first
Tell
met you?
me. I'm here. I'm listening.
I do feel like you have that gift. So we have some questions from the audience. So please, audience, feel free to keep writing your questions. I promise we're not going to ignore them. We're going to do our best to get to them in our short time together. So when I ask these questions, it's going to be open up to the entire panel. So I'm going to make sure I'm not missing any. We've answered some of these already, with especially with leadership and the importance of needing leaders to step up for diversity, and not especially moments like today, not leaning on our Black colleagues to do the work for us, right? This is where allies of all kind need to step forth and do the work. So my question to the audience is kind of twofold, or to the audience, to the panel, sorry, or to anybody. What steps should we take to make an individual feel more confident about themselves in the workplace to be their authentic self? But also, how do we get allies to support them? I know that is a very complex question for our short time together, but I'm going to go, Tamias, do you mind if I start with you on this particular question?
Yes. First, anything you do with work in building, we should be growers. We should always be developing. We should be able to see the potential in our future leaders of any company, any organization, and you have to be able to be patient and take the time to do that. But I found out one of the best ways to do that is for that actual leader to be open and be transparent and be vulnerable. There's this one leader in our group, a managing director, shortly after the George Floyd's murder took place. This is pre-trial and everything. He began just having diversity and inclusion discussions within his organization, and it became everybody from all over the company came and started having those discussions. And one of the things that he does is the first thing he says, "Hey, I won't get everything right. If you have a opinion or a thought that's different than mine, please share it here, because the dialogue and the understanding is in the discussion, and we want to get to a place where everybody is comfortable being uncomfortable, because we want to go about fixing some things and making some things right." And that began opening up and recognizing that people began finding their own voices, and that you have to give them that space to actually find their own voices, as leaders was discovering and learning new voices that they didn't know they had themselves. But it's that transparency and that openness to saying, "Hey, I'm willing to have that discussion with you, even if even if I don't agree with you, but we can find that point where we can understand each other better." And so that's one of the things that people can do for that.
I love that. I feel like it all ties back to the vulnerability piece, the openness, but also I feel like y'all are dropping so many good nuggets here of just, I have felt so many moments where I'm uncomfortable, and those are honestly the moments where I grow the most. It is so cliche to say that, but it is so true. I have learned when I've stumbled. I've learned when I've made myself uncomfortable and done the research myself, because I feel like that's an important piece to this, is not relying on people and the emotional support that you feel like you deserve from them, right? So thank you for that answer, Tamias. I'm going to hop over to Jessica. I would love to hear how we encourage people to live their authentic lives at work, but also how allies can support them in doing so.
Sure. So it's been a big challenge for me to be, truly authentic with myself. I come from the age where you didn't talk about race and religion, and you didn't talk about your husband and your kids, because you would be judged. And it was something that, growing up in career in corporate as a young Latina woman, I didn't talk about my kids. I didn't talk about my husband. I didn't talk about when he was deployed or not, because you couldn't. So it's been really challenging in this past year or two. It's been a personal journey of myself to gain more authenticity. And it was surprisingly, because I had to, in this kind of economic and social times, you have to be more authentic with yourself. Otherwise, you're not going to relate to your employees, to your leadership, to anybody. You just don't feel like you're the person that you are, because you're separating yourself. So I would say that, you're doing yourself a disjustice if you're not being your authentic self. Even though it is uncomfortable sometimes, and maybe it is growing. So sitting with it and saying, hey, you know what, this is not the person that I am that people think I am, just because I don't talk about it, right? So I think it's just learning to be a little bit uncomfortable at a lot of times, right? And I think for allies, it's that listening, right? Active listening, hearing what others say. And if you do see somebody that is uncomfortable, making sure that you have a little bit of uncomfortable discussions where you open yourself up vulnerably and say, hey, do you you have an issue, or is there something because, it seems like to me that there's something going on and I want to be better. I think a lot of times too, it is put on the people that are marginalized and underrepresented to really be doing this job and this journey with ourselves, right? But it's really everyone's responsibility to be on this journey and have these uncomfortable discussions and really sit with themselves. So I would just say, make sure you're doing the work yourself, always, right? No matter where you're sitting at, always making sure you're moving forward in this journey together. Thank you.
And Jessica, I love just the constant vulnerability you're giving us today, and thank you for that labor, because it even shows you that this panel of people, we're not perfect, and we struggle with trying to live our authentic lives at work because we also have a fear of like, how's this going to be perceived? I have a picture, you can't see it right now. Sorry, my husband. There's a picture behind me of my husband and I, and every time someone walks in my office, I do have a moment of like, what are you going to think? Are you going to judge me? Are you going to not treat me the same way? So there is that level of like, how's this going to go? Shrikant, I wonder if you also have some thoughts on this particular question.
Well, the thing is, Matt, I mean, obviously there are a lot of vulnerabilities, right? And everyone, and I also saw a question coming up, right? When suddenly you get into a team where there are all males and you're the only female getting into the meeting, what does it mean for you? So you immediately get intimidated. I got intimidated several times, right? The question is that when that happens, right, there are a few things that I could think about just as just my 2 cents. Okay, number one is, first of all, Jessica, as you said, you've got to bring your whole self, to the table, because you are important. And I want each one of our audience to know that you are important, your ideas are important. Okay, you feel confident about yourself, be candid and build the trust. That's the only way you express yourself. Do not get intimidated, because intimidation, if you yourself get biased, right, you're not doing justice to yourself. That's how I see it. That's number one. Number two is, as leaders, right? I mean, when you are, let's say, leading a team, and when you see that there is probably a kind of this kind of behavior happening, how do you nudge the person who by himself or herself thinks that he or she is probably in the minority as far as the group is concerned? No, there is no minority. There's no majority. There's no minority. How do you nudge the person? How do you pull the person into conversations? Okay, and that, I think, is very important, because in the past, Matt, I have been also, I've done mistakes, way back in my career, where leading teams, you always tend to listen to the loudest voices in the room. Okay, but there are some voices who are fantastic. They are just a little silent for whatever reasons. How do you, kind of get a hand across on the other side of the table and pull them into the conversation? And believe me, guys, some of the brilliant ideas came from the silent corner of the room, not from the voices who are loud. Okay, and that's something that I'm learning, as I kind of work myself through my career, as to how do you provide that nudge. Everybody needs a nudge. You provide the nudge to those people who are feeling vulnerable and bring them along with you to do justice. That's how I see it, man.
Thank you so much, Shrikant. We only have about 2 minutes left until our wonderful keynote, which, by the way, y'all, Punky Johnson from Saturday Night Live is our keynote, which she is incredible. If you saw Weekend Update last week, you're going to love it. It was so good. But please make sure to stick around for that. But Andrella and Michael, I want to make sure to get to y'all it looks like Punky is signing on right now. So any maybe closing thoughts that you particularly have about this question, and really getting the buy-in from people in the next minute or so?
Yeah, real quick. I think the one thing that, if you are a leader in the space, in any business, and you're trying to create safe space for your associates, please avoid trying to go in being really the perfect leader that you are every day when you're doing your work, when you're running the business. Like, this is the time for you to be authentic. This is the time for vulnerability to come through, as Jessica has displayed that so beautifully for us. Like, this is the time for you to actually lean on the human part of who you are. A lot of leaders have told me in conversations, I prep our leaders across our division around, say, having real talk conversations is what we call them. And they say, Andrella, I'm just not qualified to have this conversation. I'm nervous. I don't represent this group. And the one thing that came up for me was something that my friend told me when we were having conversations about it. She said, if you're human, you're qualified. Because there are humans being impacted by everything that is happening in our community. And we have to see ourselves as humans to step into vulnerability and courage. Just be brave, be courageous, and don't allow anything that is kind of your own whispers, the voices in your own head, to prevent you from actually elevating your voice. I am unapologetically Black all the time, and I won't compromise that for anyone. So I encourage you to always approach everything with courage.
Yes, ma'am. I just had to give a snap to that. That was awesome. Michael, I want to make sure you have some.
Yeah, I'll get it super fast. I could speak like an hour on the ally side of things, because as a white guy who grew up in East Dallas and went to an arts high school, I feel like my woke score was like high until really of course, the last couple of years became aware of what was going on, read White Fragility, and realized I'm like, holy crap, I'm part of what is one of the issues. So my take there is, if you're the ally, you don't always have to relate everything that's happening back to you to show that you're an ally. It's damaging. It's taking away from what's happening from the people that are actually experiencing the trauma. So when someone's speaking to you, just listen, just be the ally, be the sounding board. When you're asked for your opinion or perspective, that's great. So, and then on the flip side of that is, when you see the hate, when you see an opportunity to speak up, you can't sit back, because that's an active choice to not participate in being an ally. So it's hard, but if you don't commit to it 100% of the time, you're not doing much long term for everybody.
Michael, just tying it up. Thank you so much. We want to thank our panelists today, Jessica, Andrella, Michael, Shrikant, and Tamayas. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We hope this was helpful to you today. Do not forget to head over right now to see Punky Johnson speak live. So head on over. Thank you so much.